Hello, is this thing on? Oh, hey guys, we're back. Yes, that is correct. We are back. It's been a minute and a bit. Quite a lot has changed since we last did an episode, and I've already lost count of the episode. What episode are we on?
38. 38.
Oh,
That's a huge
okay.
number already.
It is a pretty big number. Is there any players you can think of that don the number 38?
Not off the top of my head. I'm blanking out here.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, in any case, we are back. Like I said, this is me, Michael. Joined beside me is Matthew.
As always.
And it's been quite an eventful week and a bit. So I guess I want to say, how's your week been, man?
My week, it's been pretty good. Kind of hasn't been that great as well because I got my wisdom teeth out on Monday. So it's that recovery, that the post wisdom teeth kind of just letting it recover, and like I don't know, we had to push this week's podcast back a little because I had to let that get a little better. Still kind of hurts, but I'm able to talk, so that's what matters, right? But pardon me if some of my words aren't as clear as usual.
It's been fine, man. I can tell you because spoiler alert, we did do a pretty cool interview today. But
which we'll get to.
No, it sounded fine. Yeah. What?
We'll get to that soon.
Very soon. Yeah. Sorry. I have very bad hearing. But more importantly, I got a sunburn last week.
Really? And
yeah.
I know you did go on vacation. And that's how you got it. So how was that?
Yes, it was great. For those of you, I don't know why I said that, but I was at Sewell Beach for the week. It's one of my favorite spots in Ontario to go just wind back and relax. And we haven't been there in a while, me and my family, so we decided let's go there for a week. Went to this cottage that had no Wi-Fi, no TV access, just this little old cottage, but it was great. It was a great time. We just got to spend time with each other, go to the beach all the time. And the only downside was just getting sunburned, and that's why I don't like being outside for the last little bit. It's like I don't want to get another sunburn.
Always make sure you put on your sunscreen and watch
yes,
that. But definitely, it's a great time to get a vacation in before the summer months are finished. And it's crazy because it feels like since March we've been on a little vacation. But definitely, it's good to utilize our summer months right now.
Absolutely, and I guess really. There's been some sports stuff in between the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
A certain team didn't do so well, and another team has been doing really well. I think
opposites,
you know where this
complete
is going.
Opposites. Oh yeah. But yeah, I mean, first before we specify what happened, we have a huge episode in store for you guys. We have Mike Stevens, NHL analyst for Yahoo Sports, joining us. We've worked alongside him for a while, so it's nice to bring him on the show. And spoiler alert, the team that lost was the Toronto Maple Leafs. They lost their qualifying round against the Columbus Blue Jackets, which, I mean, I'm pretty sure we've had a few guests on this show already predict that they would, easily take that series, but they didn't. But we'll talk more about that, with Mike in that interview, so stay tuned. But I mean, Michael, I just want to know just super quickly, just what's your feelings about that round?
Well, I was at the cottage during Game 5, and I was just barely able to get internet to be able to watch it. That was definitely one of the most frustrating moments I felt as a Leaf fan. I think a lot of people would feel the same way. It's probably up there with the most disheartening loss in franchise history, especially when you consider the Game 4 comeback. And then they followed up with the biggest goose egg in franchise history. Like, it was frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, silver lining is I get to enjoy the entire week at the cottage and just not really think about that loss too much. But yeah, I was super frustrated, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But how did you feel?
Of course, I was super frustrated, and unfortunately, I didn't have the escape of a vacation. But either way, no, like I don't know, it almost feels inevitable at this point with the Leafs and with Leafs fans. To go into elimination games and expect the worst. And I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but at least that's how I went into the game. And I mean, I almost felt indifferent this time. I know last season, for Leafs fans, it definitely hurt a lot more. But this season, it's almost like, it's just the Toronto Maple Leafs keep hurting their fans, time and time again, that it's like, I was pretty much indifferent to it. It's kind of like, I know what this is now, and something has to change, but there's no more expectations anymore. It's only pain.
Only pain.
Only pain. But yeah, I mean, I would say, of course, it was disappointing, but I got over it pretty quickly, and a lot of great hockey still going on, though, which of course we're going to talk about the Leafs more with Mike. So I do want to talk about the rest of hockey that's been going on. This bubble has been working amazingly in both regards, the NBA and the NHL, and the NHL bubble and the playoffs specifically. They've been so entertaining. I mean, you've got so many good series going on. I mean, one that I really like watching has been Philly and Montreal. They've been, neck and neck, even though, a lot of people didn't think that Montreal would go that far, or even hold up that long against the top seed. And then, of course, who could forget one of the longest games of all time, with the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Columbus Blue Jackets going to the 5th overtime period. That was insane. So just a lot of good hockey. And I want to ask you, who do you think, who would you like to see in the finals?
Well, first of all, it's been quite the entertaining playoffs. I will admit. It's obviously frustrating not to see the Leafs in it. We've already just established that. But, I mean, we've been seeing some great series. The Vancouver-St. Louis series is one that I've really enjoyed watching from afar. A little bit of a confession to make. Vancouver is my second favorite team in the NHL. And they're pretty much proving that I've made the right choice to make them my team in the West. But I guess most ideal Stanley Cup finals would most likely be Colorado versus Tampa. But I mean, that's pretty obvious. Like, those are the two high-flying teams, and that'd be like, what happens when two immovable objects face off against each other? There's going to be an explosion. It's going to be great. But I think if we're going to go, I'm going to go a little bit off the board with this one. I think let's have a chaotic matchup. How about Vegas versus Montreal? That would be the craziest one.
That would be crazy. I think if Montreal just simply gets to the Stanley Cup final somehow, as you can't even call them like the 8th seed in this case. They're, you would say call them like the 24th place team in the whole league. Somehow they made it in these circumstances. But the fact that they can get up there is just crazy. And that would already be complete chaos. But definitely would be a really fun series. I would love to see a Philly and Colorado series. Both great teams. Both likable teams. And Philly especially has really made a mark. Colorado last season, a lot of people were pretty high on them. Like, you kind of saw that progression go out from them for a few years now. But Philly really had an excellent season this season, and they just came into this bubble like ready to dominate. So it's kind of questionable how they've been kind of struggling with Montreal so far, when you think that would be an easier series. But I think they could still have a good path to the Stanley Cup Finals. And I think that would be a great, Eastern Conference champion.
Speaking of great matchups, I guess we want to just quickly shift focus to the NBA. And we already mentioned that the Raptors have been doing excellent. And at the time that we're recording this, they just beat the Nets, and they're up 3-0 in their series. I guess really what I want to talk about is just, what's this team's ceiling? Can this team do it again? Can they reach the finals? Or are there too many obstacles in their way?
Okay, I got to sit back in my chair because there's a lot to talk about here, but we'll make it quick. But the story of the whole season, I mean, if you've been following our podcast since episode 1 way back, it's that this wild card of a season, has just increased it's almost like increased our expectations, even though our expectations have never been there. We've never had expectations. Raptors fans have never had expectations for the Raptors because, given what happened in the offseason with Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green leaving, Raptors fans are just happy with the championship they won. But the fact that they've found success so easily, without expectations, has just made this season so fun to watch. And I feel like we used to say, I could see the Raptors going to the second round, and then it turned into I could see them going to the conference finals, or I can go see them going to the finals. And now I really think, I can see them winning the championship, like, actually, because now we're sitting here on Friday night, The Raptors are up 3-0. And the other series are going on right now, but who's gonna stop the Toronto Raptors from getting a championship? The teams that come to mind are Boston, Milwaukee, and then Lakers or Clippers. And the Lakers or Clippers in the West are both kind of, I wouldn't say struggling, but they've been looking off, especially the Lakers. Ever since they entered the bubble, they've been pretty off. Of course, the Toronto Raptors were able to dominate them in their their regular season game in the bubble, and got the win there. And everyone wanted to write the Toronto Raptors off even then, and make excuses for the Lakers. But I don't think there's a lot of excuses. Again, we know that the Lakers have a very big depth problem. They're really front loaded with just relying mainly on those two stars in Anthony Davis and LeBron James. But when Toronto is able, like they were when they played against them, when they were able to hold them to I don't have the exact number, I think combined like 23 points or something like that. So it was a low number, especially combined. When you're able to contain those two superstars, and again they have a lack of depth after that. And I mean, Danny Green, we love Danny Green because he was a Toronto Raptor, but he really hasn't been playing that great in the bubble, and it's been tough. So I they're not really as much of a threat as I would have assumed at first. And then when you're looking at the Clippers, I mean, the Mavericks are a great team, and I told you about this before. They're just looking like a great team with Luka Doncic. I would say maybe they're just a little more underrated than people are just saying, the Clippers are struggling, but maybe I'm still a little scared of the Clippers. But the Bucks as well have they lost game 1 and by a sizable margin. Of course, they bounced back in game 2 against the Orlando Magic, but there's still a lot of holes there, especially Chris Middleton, who did not have a good game in game 2. Giannis kind of carried that team still to a win, of course, alongside Eric Bledsoe. But there's still a lot of questions on there, and the Raptors are just a depthful team who can, has like 4 to 5 guys who can put up 15 to 20 points any given night that you need. So I don't know. I think they can go all the way.
I couldn't agree more, man. I definitely think this team's got what it takes, and I think they've given us the benefit of the doubt because of how well they played last year. I've been very happy with how they've been playing, and I think that's just been a testament to the work that's been done by Masai to build the culture that's been established for the last couple of years, and just how much success this team has had, and they continue to have, even in spite of such a monumental loss. It's not many teams are able to recover from losing their best player in the NBA. But yet, look at the Raptors. They might be able to do it again without their best player. That says a lot about the team that they have assembled, and I think that makes them really exciting to watch. I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do for the next couple of years. And hey, you know what? Next year in 2021, there might be some players coming over across the border.
And I just want to say this as well. I mean, given the fact that you mentioned that not a lot of teams can bounce back from losing a star player, and I just want to say, of course, last year everyone was writing off the Raptors, even though they won the championship. Everyone wants to give the Raptors an asterisk because the Golden State Warriors had a number of injuries, to Kevin Durant and then DeMarcus Cousins and then Klay Thompson. But just look at how depthful of a team the Toronto Raptors were. And in sports, teams should be built depthful. And I mean, of course, one way to win is, I guess, front loading your team, but clearly we've seen that it can go wrong really easily. And you look at a depthful team like the Raptors, and even though they lose a star, they're still, I'd say even better because they had that team built. And if we look at other stars who have left, LeBron James, whenever he left the Cleveland Cavaliers, they just sank straight to the ground. Whenever, even this season with the Golden State Warriors, nobody left, but even with injuries, they sank straight to the ground. The Toronto Raptors did not. They actually rose, and that is something spectacular to see. But enough about the Raptors. I do also want to just ask you about what do you think about the other, your overall impression about the other matchups in the NBA bubble?
Well, I think I told you this before we started recording, but if there's one team that could potentially pull off an upset, it's most likely the Trailblazers.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at that team with Damian Lillard, and that's a team that has not like a lot to prove, or just like they don't have much expectations on them. So with a team that's loose and with no pressure on them to do anything, who's to say that they can't shock the world and make LeBron and Anthony Davis leave early? That
Mm-hmm.
that team is capable, and we've been seeing it in scrimmage game, like the exhibition games, or whatever you want to call them. I can't remember, but the Blazers have been playing with a chip on their shoulder, sit in the bubble, and I've been really excited to see what they can do, because Damian Lillard just looks like someone that really could use a championship, and I think this is the kind of situation where, like, if he can somehow knock off the Lakers, imagine how much confidence it would give them going further into the playoffs. Like, that's a team that could do some damage, and I literally look forward to seeing this this Lakers Blazer series go how it goes, because it looks like it could be more than just like a chip, like a mosquito on the Lakers' arms and they swat it away. I feel like there's more than that.
For sure. And I mean, I could talk about Damian Lillard all day, but it's crazy because every time he gets doubted, he just plays that much better. And that's exactly what he did this season in this bubble. I mean, obviously he's the bubble MVP, but it's just crazy because I don't know if everyone's just forgetting or they just want to write them off, but they went all the way to the conference finals last season. And they didn't have the greatest season that they expected this season, but Damian Lillard, honestly, on a lot of nights, especially in the bubble, he single-handedly carried that Blazers team straight into the playoffs. And he is definitely he's exploded into, I mean, we kind of knew he was a top 10 player, but everyone had their doubts, and I definitely even had my doubts about putting him exactly where I want to rank him. Of course, he was a top 10 player this season. Does that put him in the top 10 of the entire league, permanently? And now I'm starting to think for sure, because I'm honestly looking at him as a top 3 point guard right now, like, for sure. I mean, maybe even top 2. And the only person right now I don't think he can touch is Steph Curry. And of course, Steph Curry didn't really play this season, so I'm not even mentioning this season alone. But I mean, that's given what Steph Curry was able to achieve in his time already. But Damian Lillard is, in terms of dominance, is right there.
I agree. Hey, quick question. Wasn't he drafted in the 2012 draft?
Yes, he was.
You know what? That seems like the perfect time to transition into our draft redo. That's right, folks. We did not forget about that series. It is back with a vengeance. Let's do this thing.
We took a 3-week break from it because we had before our 2-week break, we had a very special episode on racial issues in sports. So again, if you guys haven't listened to that, I highly recommend it. But going back to the draft, yeah, I mean, we have been doing this. If you haven't been following along, we've been doing this every week. We've been doing a new, like, the next year of the draft. We've been redrafting the draft. We started with the NHL drafts, and now we're doing the NBA drafts. Today we have the 2012 NBA redraft. So how we do it is, I mean, we just alternate picks. One of us gets the first pick, one of us gets the second pick, and so on. And we kind of build a team that way, and we just do the top 10, just to keep it nice and concise.
Yep. We're going to try to keep these explanations of why we picked each player short, because we just do have a lot to go over, and we want to make sure that you guys don't miss out on everything else we have in store for you today, especially the Mike Stevens interview, which, as you've been can tell by how much we've been hyping it up, it's going to be a great discussion. But anyway, let's get right into the draft. This time, I'm going to be picking first. You're going to be picking second. We're just going to go back and forth, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so let's get right into it. Mikey, you're up.
I think this player needs no introduction, and he doesn't really need much of an explanation of why he was picked. He's going to be taken first again, but the first overall pick in the 2012 NBA draft is going to be taken first in the 2012 redraft, and that's Anthony Davis.
Excellent pick. I mean, again, I don't even want to get it. I don't even think we need to get into the stats with him. He's been, a perennial MVP candidate on a number of occasions. This year, he's teamed up with LeBron James in LA, and kind of finally found that missing piece for success. Even in his time with New Orleans, he's found a lot of success. Of course, let me pull up some of his stats, but I mean, just honestly, just a great pick and literally one of the top 10 players in this league year in, year out.
I've been very impressed with his development. Overall, he's been great to watch. It's been a shame that it didn't really work out in New Orleans, but I feel like he's found a great home in Los Angeles. He's been a great compliment to LeBron James, and that team seems to be doing well too. I mean, I'm not trying to discredit the Lakers, but they still have something great going, and
For sure.
if they do have what it takes to win a championship. That's for sure.
For sure. And just quickly, in terms of achievements, he's a 7-time NBA All-Star, dating back to 2014. He's been a 3-time All-NBA First Team member, All-NBA All-Defensive First Team in 2018. Just a whole lot of, achievements. And, let's not forget that guys in this draft are only, reaching 20, 26, 27, 28 right now. So, he's still very young. And, again, he has a big decision this offseason to make. I have no doubt that he'll pick the Lakers, but still, just a perennial superstar.
Absolutely. I don't think he needs any further explanation. He's been the best paid player in this draft, and I think maybe the next player on this in this draft is probably going to challenge him, but I think he's still good at number one. So why don't you take the second pick?
I was going to say you kind of made my job a little easier here because honestly, when I was doing my rankings for this draft, these 1 and 2 were really interchangeable, and it was really hard for me to decide who would go first and who would go second. But of course, I'm going to go with who we just spoke about before we started this draft, Damian Lillard, who originally went 6th overall in the draft. And
excellent pick.
Again, like we've spoken about, I think the thing is, Anthony Davis has been dominant, a dominant superstar since he got into this league. Damian Lillard had a more, upwards trajectory in terms of his career. He had to kind of develop a little more to the point he is where he's at now. But, Damian Lillard, might I say, could be the better player than Anthony Davis, and that's why I'm so glad that I could get him at second. Either way, you can't go wrong with either of the players, but the fact that he's kind of taking as the number one option on this Portland Trailblazers teams for the last number of years, and he's being so dominant, and he's kind of, bringing them to such great heights. I mean, last season, the conference finals, and this season, even if he can upset a Los Angeles Lakers team that's, the favorites to win, that would be amazing too. But it's definitely easy to see that now he has solidified himself in that superstar category. And like I said, even a top 2 point guard in this league.
It's something I wanted to bring up earlier, but didn't get a chance to. I just want to say, if Damian Lillard wins a championship at some point in his career, would you say he's one of the best point guards of all time?
Well, he's still young, so we still have to see what he can achieve. Again, that's a big, a big title to try and put on him. But given the trajectory he's going, again, he'll need to win a few championships just to get that. I don't think one will suffice. But I wouldn't say. I think just, given his, Steph Curry's impact on the game, I think he'll always be seen as a higher regard. But Damian Lillard he could end as one of the top point guards of all time if he wins some championships and is able to, make those changes on a team.
I agree. And, it's funny you mentioned the Warriors in championship because that pretty much spoils who I'm going to be taking with the 3rd overall pick. I don't need to go further into details about him. Say what you will about him, but he's still a great player. Draymond Green.
Excellent pick. I mean, again, a lot of people have kind of written him off the last couple seasons, but I still say he's one of the best defensive players in this league, easily. And he's just still reliable. Of course, this season the whole Warriors team has been kind of a wreck this year, so I'll write him off on that at least. But what a draft steal! I mean, 2nd round, 35th overall in the draft, and he's a perennial All-Star in this league. 3-time All-Star, 3-time NBA champion, and really his defense is where he comes in clutch. You can't go wrong with selecting one of the best defense players in the league.
I totally agree, and I think he plays a big part in why the Warriors were able to win all those championships from 2015 to 2018. And if even though this year was a bit of maybe an anomaly, I think they'll still be in contention for the next few years. And I think if they're going to be winning more championships, it's going to be because of Draymond Green. He's definitely important to their team.
Mm-hmm. Now, with my fourth pick, I'm going to take our first drop, but only a minor drop in the draft here. But in terms of second options, I'd say one of the best second options in the league, and definitely an all-star star player in his own right. But from the Washington Wizards, Bradley Beal.
Excellent pick, man. That's really good.
He originally went third, and he drops to fourth here. But again, a two-time NBA All-Star the last 2 seasons. Not this season, unfortunately, but again, we've been able to see what he can do this season. Without John Wall and as the number one option in Washington. And this season, I mean, let's not forget he had his best season as a number one option this year. Of course, Washington didn't succeed this season, but he averaged 30.6 points per game, and that's pretty insane.
It's been crazy.
He only played 57 games though, but still.
Remember that time around the trade deadline when people were very convinced that he was going to be leaving the Wizards, and Raptors fans getting excited like, "Ooh, we can get Bradley Beal in trade." Those were fun times.
I definitely still think he is on the trade market, especially given the current state of Washington. But we'll see. He's definitely up, a star.
I agree.
All right, so let's get this going a little quicker here.
Yes. This fifth pick is also a star in his own right, and he's also another big jump. I think he was easily a steal in this draft, and that's Chris Middleton of the Milwaukee Bucks.
Great player. I mean, I know I mentioned that he's been kind of struggling in these playoffs the last couple games, but definitely a great player. He's been really good this season, really, really good this season, and really, a great second option in general for Giannis. I do hope that, he can give him more support because, in the playoffs when it comes to when it actually has to get done, he has some holes, but definitely a great pick and obviously an all-star this year.
Absolutely agree, man. And he's been great. I remember doing that series against the Bucks. I was always a little bit nervous when he was going up for shots because I was certain a lot of times he was going to put it in. He's a good player. Let's not discredit him. He's definitely worthy of where he's at, and he's definitely earned his keep. And I think Milwaukee's found something special in Chris Middleton.
So now with the sixth pick in this draft, in this redraft, I'm going to take Andre Drummond.
Ooh,
so
that's a good pick.
There's kind of been a little drop in star quality here, but still a lot of quality players there. And Andre Drummond is still an all-star, a 2-time all-star both in 2016 and 2018. And again, of course, he got traded from Detroit to Cleveland in the past season, but still, a great defensive player who's been able to bring a lot to his team.
Yep, I definitely agree. Like, say what you will about Andre Drummond, but I think he still provides value in his defensive game, and I think that definitely is important. I think there's still a lot of value to be had in him. If he had a better shot, I think he'd be much higher in this draft class. But hey, there's still room for players like that, like him in the NBA. So I think he's definitely earned his keep.
For sure. And now you're up.
Number 8. I don't think number 7 actually.
Number 7,
sorry,
yeah.
I was jumping the gun a little bit
no
there.
Worries.
Ooh. Another former Warrior. Has had a bit of an interesting career, but I think he's definitely good for 7th, which is actually where he was drafted in real life, Harrison Barnes. Yep,
that's where I had Harrison Barnes as well, and definitely a very solid role player, especially, he's great off the bench, or he could even play, in a starting position, which he has played. Just a great player that can, you can really depend on, and a proven winner. But we'll definitely see how his career continues to pan out. Now he's landing in Sacramento.
It'll be interesting to see if he can become a more consistent starter in Sacramento. Maybe he's got something going there, or maybe he'll do it somewhere else.
For sure. With my 8th pick, I'm gonna take a former Toronto Raptor here, and that is Terrence Ross, who also went 8th when in the actual draft. But yeah, now he plays for the Orlando Magic, and he's still putting up buckets.
He's been great, man. You know what? I will say this. I really enjoyed Terrence Davis when he was on the Raptors. It was such a shame to Terrence Ross.
Yeah,
I don't know why I'm confusing Terrence
no
Ross and Anthony Davis. That's a new player, guys. Terrence Davis, welcome to the Raptors.
Terrence Davis is a Raptor.
Wait. Oh my God. Are you kidding me?
Don't worry. It's been a jumbled up week for everyone.
Yeah. This is just we're shaking off the rust. But yes, Terrence Ross, he was a great Raptor. I thought it was a shame to see him go, but wasn't he part of the Serge Ibaka trade?
Yeah, he was. So he was the major piece to help land Serge Ibaka.
You know what? In that sense, I think he was good for the time, and just the fact that we got such a valuable player in Serge Ibaka. The Raptors got a valuable player in Serge Ibaka. That was great for them.
For sure, and let's not forget he was the slam dunk contest winner in 2013, the first Raptor to win it since Vince Carter.
Let me ask you this before we move on. Do you think he's one of the most interesting players to hit 50 points in a game?
For sure. Let's not forget that game. That was crazy, but yeah, especially considering he is a bench player, and he scored that. That was insane. But Terrence Davis. Shout out to Terrence Davis, also a great player for the Raptors. Is that going to be a joke, a meme now for this podcast? Terrence Davis is a Raptor.
Yep, he is now the newest Raptor, and I'm a little bit slow, guys. I'm
no, it's not your fault.
2007.
I mean, Terrence Davis has been playing great in this bubble, so he's been on your mind.
Clearly.
So you're
number 9
up with 9, yeah.
Yeah. This one's going to be pretty easy. I was worried. I was not sure if this player was going to be available, but after you took Terrence Ross, it's easy for me to do. That's going to be Jay Crowder.
Awesome, Jay Crowder, another great player, especially on the defensive end. Really a really solid, dependable player that you could really, depend on, especially coming off your bench. Right now he plays for the Miami Heat, but I think most of his, a lot of his, prime was when he was in Boston and in Cleveland as well. Great, just a great player overall.
Absolutely agree. Great player. I think he's definitely one of those players that definitely knows his role, and he's fulfilled it very well everywhere he's been. Like, there's nothing, you can't go wrong with a guy like that. When you sign a guy like that, he's going to be providing good depth. He'll be most likely coming off the bench, and that's still valuable in this league. And I think he's made a career out of it, and it's worked out well for him.
For sure. And I guess I'm up with the 10th and final pick in this draft. And I'm going to take it back to another Orlando Magic player, and I'm going to take Evan Fournier.
Very good pick.
Again, Evan Fournier, I mean, we've seen him play. He's been pretty solid in this first-round series against the Bucks too. But, what can I say about him? Just a solid, dependable role player that, really he has been a big help for the Magic on the offensive end. And considering he was taken 20th overall, that's a pretty good pick for, his caliber of player. He's not a star or anything, but he's very dependable, and he jumps up here to 10th in our draft.
It's funny. I was just looking back at our draft list. It looks very much the same as the draft that I was writing down. There was only maybe one minor change, like the 8th and 9th spot, but otherwise it's pretty accurate. I say that's a testament. Like, the top players, we know who the top players are, and obviously if we really wanted to keep going, the town would just drop off spectacularly.
A lot of stars in this draft, though, as we see in the top 5, especially. A lot of impact players, and this was a really solid draft overall.
I say that was pretty good. Next week, hopefully, we will be doing the 2013 NBA Draft.
Ooh.
And when I say hopefully, it's like we always say, we're going to do the draft, and then something crazy happens and we can't do it. But
we're
going to make sure...
I'm cringing because we know the first overall pick from that draft is arguably one of the biggest busts of all time. A Canadian though. So shout out Anthony Bennett. You were a Raptor for some time too.
Imagine if you take him first overall again.
Maybe I should. But no, I think there's a really clear pick for next draft. But that's next week, so tune in then. But now we spent a lot of time in this intro. Let's get into the meat of this podcast episode, which is our interview with Mike Stevens, NHL analyst for Yahoo Sports Canada. So how about we go into that now?
And we're back. Today on the show, we are very pleased to be joined by Mike Stevens. He's currently an NHL analyst for Yahoo Sports after covering the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Toronto Marlies for a few years at both the Leafs Nation and Editor-in-Chief. And we can also say that he was our former boss at editor-in-chief.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the show, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. How about you?
Awesome. I'm doing awesome. I mean, we kind of spoke about it before, but the Raptors just won Game 3 of their first round series, so mood's good. Obviously, we'll talk a lot about the other Toronto team on the other end of the scale there, but yeah, things have been going good this week.
That's
Good
been
to
great.
hear.
Yeah, it's good for us too. Before we just really get into the media things, we just want to ask you what made you want to get into sports media, and tell us a little bit about that.
Well, to be honest, I didn't go to school for sports media. I went to U of T for political science and American studies, and so my initial plan was to be a lawyer, to go to law school. And I was working some internships downtown, and one of them it was about 5 years ago, I think 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know. Time is a construct at this point. It doesn't even. And my job was kind of to wait on people to get back to me. Like I was overseeing a project for this company, and I was waiting for people to get back to me. And I was just so bored. And I thought, if this is going to be kind of what the rest of my life is like, I hate this. And I would always be interested. I always wanted to be in sports media. Like, I grew up idolizing the broadcasters over the players, really. Like sports, Sports Center and Sportsnet Connected and all that every morning, reading countless articles, all that kind of stuff. And I thought, there's no better time right now where I have to wait for people to get back to me all the time than to just give it a shot. So funny enough, I messaged someone who was at Fansided, being like, hey, I'll write for free. Like, just kind of want to get my name out there. It ended up, being good. And I ended up starting to write for Editor-in-Chief, and then kind of built my way up from there. And it was great. But yeah, no, sports, I wasn't really passionate about what I was studying, and I wasn't really passionate about what I was working in. And as someone who was trying to map out the rest of my life, I just went, I want to do what my passion is. I want to do what makes me happy and try and make that into a career. And I've been lucky enough to be able to do that to this point. Hopefully, they don't realize their gross mistake and reverse it. But yeah, it's been great.
Of course. That's an awesome story there. Yeah. And I was going to say, I mean, of course, you probably felt really scared to drop the kind of the career path that you spent so much time getting into, and then at that point just trying to switch gears almost completely. Like, what was that like? I'm sure it was really nerve-wracking.
It was a leap for sure. And I mean, my dad always makes fun of me for it, because I always run stuff by him, and when I got offered the job for to run Editor-in-Chief, it was a lot of work. Like, you had to write something every single day, oversee all this stuff. It was crazy. And I still was like, I'm finishing my degree, I'm getting that. Like, I've worked hard enough for this. So ended up working full time in media and going to school full time too, which was, I would not recommend that. That I essentially didn't sleep for 2 straight years. But he always makes fun of me, or not fun of me, but he always pokes fun at that. He's given me great advice my entire life, but the one time he told me not to do something that I should have was taking that job. But yeah, no, it was definitely a leap. Like, especially considering that the industry, and even now it's kind of contracting, but at the time it was really contracting, and so it was tough. But I just you just look at the rest of your life, because I was at when I started making this choice, I was 20, 21 or something. You're at a point where you got to look at the rest of your life and kind of map it out and see what you want to do. And I just wasn't happy with where I was, and I thought, this is what I've always wanted to do, and why not? And I did, and it's worked out pretty well so far. So I'm could not be happier.
Absolutely, man. And for those people at home, it's like, obviously, when you're at the stage of our lives where we're in our early to mid 20s, just trying to figure out what to do with the rest of our lives. It's always a big jump to have to go from something that's securely financial, like what you were doing, and then to go to this industry that's in a tough spot. But when you know what you want to do and you pursue it, who cares? It's going to be a fun at the end.
Exactly.
100%. If you're happy, it's essentially prioritizing happiness. Like, if you're happy, if you're doing what you love, then, and you're happy every day, like the moniker, if you love what you do, then you never work a day in your life. And it's fine. Like, then that's true. And that you should absolutely try and strive for that if possible, because I just looked at, like I said, what I was doing, and I'm like, if I have to do this for the next 50 years or something, depending on how much time I have left on this earth, then, I'm not going to be happy. So yeah, it worked out pretty well.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about that grind, though, because obviously your journey to Yahoo now is somewhat similar to kind of the path me and Michael have been taking. In the fact that you wrote for both Editor in Leaf and the Leafs Nation. And what was that kind of progression like through your career?
It was interesting, right? Like you just basically what happened is I started writing for Editor and Leaf, like started writing for free, and then I realized this was in 2017, I think. So and I realized the rookie tournament was at Rico at the time, Rico Coliseum in Toronto, and so I thought no one's really covering this, like at least on like in the blog kind of aspect of things, no one's really covering this. So I literally just bought tickets for like every game that weekend, brought my laptop, went down there, and there wasn't like a ton of people there, and the arena has like these sort of lean on these like platform kind of things, like where you can put a laptop. It's kind of like a standing desk, and so I just put it there, and I essentially just took notes and then wrote about it and covered it kind of without a media pass. And then sort of started chatting with some actual media people that were there, and then eventually got the email address of the Marlies PR person, and it kind of presented what my coverage plan would be for that season, and she said great, and there we go. And I started covering the Marlies, and that really gave me some awesome experience into what covering professional hockey beat was like, and building relationships with players who are now on the Leafs or were on the Leafs, and it was just really good. But at the same time, doing full-time school and writing for Editor and Leaf, managing the site, covering the Marlies beat, all that kind of stuff. It was really it was a grind, right? Like I'm not someone who kind of half-asses anything, so it was kind of having to whole ass two things at the same time was it was a grind. And like I said, it really kind of took a toll on like the mental health aspect of everything. Like I just really wasn't taking care of myself, and I wouldn't recommend anyone doing that. Like obviously go pursue your dreams and pursue your passions, but if it gets in the way of your health, or your well-being, then maybe dial it back a bit or do what's best for you. But it was really good. It really kind of taught me a lot. Like at Editor and Leaf, you have to, the job that I had, you have to write at least one thing every day, and so it was kind of like just getting reps in all the time. And so I just for 2 straight years I wrote at least once every day, and so you really get those reps in, and you kind of don't have time to really get in your head too much about what you're writing. You just, if you're not happy with something, you go, okay, well, I'll just do better tomorrow, and you get that feel. And so now, like when something happens, it really helped me kind of find inspiration quick. I don't know. It was really good, and it was kind of a trial by fire, and it was great.
Awesome.
Absolutely. It's just for the listeners at home. It's very important to have self-care, especially just making sure your own mental and physical health is in good shape. So don't ever think you're pushing yourself too hard. If you need that break, take that break. There's no shame in that.
And I wanted to,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I love that point from you. I wasn't even going to talk about, because, especially in our industry, like they always tell you, it's really like, experience based, people have to make portfolios or have work out there, and people are always, being told to keep grinding and, always keep working and things like that. And obviously it's important, like, to get those stories and get your reporting done, but you need time to, for self-care. And I think that's so important, especially for anyone trying to get into, sports media or journalism or in that industry specifically.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And like, yeah, it's very, very important to recognize what your limits are and what's best for you. And you're right. There is that sort of like, mentality. You have to always be grinding, but it's quantity at the end of the day. Like you can put as much stuff out as possible. And this is one thing that I really kind of didn't agree with the whole fan-sided, business plan, is like prioritize, quantity over quality. And you can put 50 articles out a day, but if they're all bad, then they're going to be all bad, right? So you just don't. It's better to put yourself in a position to succeed, and if that means maybe taking some stuff off your plate so the other things can kind of have more room to thrive, then that's the way to do it.
Exactly.
I just want to change gears for a second. You were mentioning in your grind, trying to get from Editor and Leaf to where you are now, 2016 tournament, and I believe that there is a certain player that You caught your eye in that tournament.
I wonder where this is going.
So I think you know where this is going. And I think most people that have paid attention to you know this story. But to the listeners at home that maybe have no idea what we're talking about, why don't you explain to us?
Yeah, sure. So he was, So I was covering the 2017 rookie tournament, and I was watching the games that the Leafs prospects were playing, and at the time there weren't like a crazy amount of like marquee. I mean, this was Liljegren's debut, and so that was interesting. But and I noticed one guy who kind of just stood above the rest, and it was a little guy by the name of Trevor Moore, and I was like, I really like the way this guy plays. Like, he's not. He's just like really tenacious. His back check is fantastic. He doesn't. And one thing that I really found with prospects too, I always use this example whenever I talk about this is Kirby Reichel at the time. He was 23 in that season, 23 or 24, reaching that stage where you kind of have to. Are you still a prospect, or you need to be an NHLer? Like, you're really it's kind of a make or break moment. And he would rack up goals, but he would kind of cheat for them. He'd sacrifice coverage to get in a good spot or something like that. Trevor Moore, even though he was the same age, he never did that. He didn't care what his numbers were as long as they were kind of helping the team. He really bought into the structure. I just really liked the way he played. I don't know what it was. Maybe it's because I'm a short guy too. So like I just felt solidarity with him. But I was like, I really like the way this guy plays, and he seems like he's really set up. And he just entered the development camp as like a walk-on and earned a entry-level contract. Like, the three players who signed entry-level contracts after the 2016 Leafs development camp were Mitch Marner, Adam Brooks, and Trevor Moore. So he was in pretty distinguished company, and he had a great tournament. And then I covered him on the Marlies that year, and he was kind of instrumental in helping them win the Calder Cup. And ever since then, I've really, he's really had a soft spot for me. I really believe in him as a player, and he's not spectacular or anything, but he was just kind of my guy. And he was a pleasure to deal with in the media too. Always gave great answers, was always really kind, around the rink. So yeah, you don't want to, like, pick favorites and everything when you're, in the media. And I'm not, I try and hide behind the sheen of, I'm unbiased, but everyone knows, like, Leafs, whatever. But Trevor Moore is, I mean, he's just like an all around great player. And, it was heartbreaking to see him leave, but it did get us Jack Campbell, which was not too shabby. So yeah, but he's great, and I'm sure he's going to tear it up in LA.
For sure, of course. And I mean, I want to ask you, even on top of that story, but during your time covering the Marlies, do you have any crazy memories or fond memories that you can remember from then? Of course, everyone loves to talk about covering the Leafs and things like that, but I know there's a lot that people might miss out, or cool things that people see in the Marlies, really.
Yeah, like, I mean, that was a really fun team to cover. Like, it was a very young team, but they were also really good. So it was, and this was Keith when I think he really kind of came into his own as a coach, and yeah, it was a really fun year to cover with them. A couple were, so like, for example, this one always sticks out in my mind, where Adam Brooks didn't score. This was his rookie season. And he didn't score a goal for like his first goal until New Year's Eve of that year. I remember it was a New Year's Eve game. And Jeremy Bracco, they're best buds, and Jeremy Bracco was like, he was scratched for that game. I don't think it was like performance wise. He just like wasn't playing. He was getting a rest day or whatever. And Brooks finally scored in that game, and it was like the entire team was like so happy. Like, I remember Travis Dermott just like lifted him up. It was hilarious. And I remember because the way that we have to wait for the for the scrums is kind of outside their dressing room. So we watched them kind of like walk back into the dressing room while we're waiting there. And Bracco was in a suit, and Brooks came in last because he was doing, the walk-off interview because he was like the first star of the game. And Bracco just took a running start and just leaped into Brooks's arms, like just full speed, to the point where like if he like Brooks had no choice but to catch him, or else he would have just gone like completely past him. It was hilarious. And so yeah, it was just really great. Like trying to think of what else. Like there's one time we were interviewing Andreas Janssen, and Travis Dermott came up from behind us and was just like, "Oh, I like hockey," like in a Swedish accent, and made him laugh, stuff like that. It was just a lot of fun. I met a lot of great people during that time, like a lot of friends, like for example, like Scott Wheeler is a great friend of mine. I met him there. Haley Salvian's one of my best friends, and met her along that beat too. It was just a great experience. Really, 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 really good for experience in the industry. Taught me a lot, and I really cherish those memories. It's great. I miss it sometimes.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no shame in saying, "Hey, I cover a minor hockey team," because there's always some fun to be had. And there's always some interesting story angles that could be found in those games, and those are just two great stories. I want to ask you, since you're on the subject, what was probably the funniest interview you had during your time covering the Marlies?
Ooh, funniest interview. Well, what was great is like it's always great when you get the players a good mood. And so I remember I was at like practices. The practices like when the season was over, but the playoffs hadn't started yet, were great because everyone's kind of just loose and really kind of preparing for it. And this was right when Fortnite came around. So I just asked like a bunch of players all about Fortnite, and it was really funny to ask the veterans about it because they were just because they really did try to be cool with the players, with the younger guys, and play it, but they just didn't know. I remember like Ben Smith, for example, I asked him, like, how did you do on Fortnite? He's like, I played it one time. I walked around for 15 minutes, then I died, and I came like 17th or something. I thought that was pretty good. And I'm like, that's great, man. What was your favorite place to drop? And he's just like, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't know any of that. I just walked around. It was fun. Like it's a job and everything, but like you have to remember, like these are humans. Like Travis Dermott, for example, is the best quote possible. Like he's a reporter's dream. He always gives you great answers. He's always really funny. I would say the best interview was right after they won the cup, the Calder Cup. I was on the ice. I was next to Gord Brown. I think he was a barn burner at the time. And Travis Dermott was like celebrating everything, and he was about to get off the ice. And so I was right next to Gord, and Gord and I were just like, hey, Travis, like, what are you going to do when you get in the dressing room now that you won the Calder Cup? And he just looked us right in the eye, said, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to kiss every guy on the mouth, and then just left. And it was great. So yeah, just a really fun group of guys.
That was definitely a very fun team to watch from afar too. And I mean, you saw we obviously knew like how frustrating it was to watch that 2018 Leafs team lose to the Bruins and then the Raptors. We don't want to talk about that, but just to see a Toronto team like from MLSC, was that the year the TFC won their championship too? I can't remember.
I think it was no. I think it was the year before that they did.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like that was the one team moment. The one fun Toronto team to watch that year. That's for sure.
For sure.
That was fun, and that was like the first of the two consecutive Boston first round flameouts in Game 7, and it was So like Leafs fans at that time, there was so much hope around like the prospects on that team. So there was a lot of attention paid there. It was a lot of fun.
Well, since you're talking about a lot of fun, one thing that we've been seeing you've been taking part in and having some great moments is the Dangle Navy team. And we've already had two members of the Dangle Navy team on our podcast, Ian Tulloch and Tic Tac Tomar, of course. Yes. We want to just talk to you about your experience, and then, of course, leave the floor to you to smack talk your teammates.
Well, yeah, no, it's such a blast. Like for anyone who doesn't know what the Dangle Navy is, it's just a group of guys. It's me, Steve Dangle, Ian Tulloch, James Myrtle, and then Omar as well, and then three Nick, James, and Brady, who are three guys who I didn't know until I started playing with them, and now we talk every day, like in group chat and everything. It's great, and so. During they started playing well before I joined, but I really joined at the start of quarantine when everything shut down, and they were kind of instrumental. We all were, I think, instrumental in keeping each other sane during this time. Like we would play until 3 a.m. every night, and when there was just nothing to do. And then we eventually organized like a couple charity tournaments against the Pete Blackburn and Adam Wilde and Jesse Blake's team called the Extra Toasties, and just absolutely clapped them. So that was easy. And then so it's just so much fun. Like we have a lot of fun playing. I haven't played in a little while though, just because I started to try and go to bed at a decent hour, opposed to staying up until literally like the odd hours of the morning. But they're always fun. The group chat's always going strong, and it's just like it's a great group of people to be around all the time. And it got me really good at Chell. I was never good at Chell, but you're kind of forced to be, because I started taking all these penalties at the start, tripping penalties, because this game is broken. And I was a liability, and so I kind of had to shape up. So it forced me to be to be decent, and I wouldn't even call myself good, but it's great. So yeah, I really look forward to them. And the nights where Ian isn't a complete liability on defense, those are great. So it's just a heartwarming group of guys. Really love it.
Awesome, of course, and yeah, I know. Just gaming in general could just be so fun. We play with Omar. We play.
He's the best guy to play with.
He's the best. Like we play, Fortnite, Call of Duty with him, stream it, and yeah, he's just hilarious to play with. But
have we talked about his phobia of sharks?
Yeah,
it's because of Fortnite, right?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it kind of became a meme on my stream with him. Basically, the Fortnite sharks terrify him like every single time. So next time you guys play together, make sure to tease him in some way with that.
We were doing duos at the start of quarantine, and like Omar it's really funny because you can't see the guy playing, you just hear him. And this was both our first time playing Fortnite in a while, and they changed this game so much.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know there was a shark in it until you guys posted about it, because I took like a month off or something. And we were doing this is when you were infiltrating the agency or whatever. We didn't even realize we were infiltrating. And he just was like screaming about a cat man running around. He's like, the cat man's looking at me, and he like was trying to, and then he shot him, but like you don't die, like the cat man doesn't die really, like you can pick him up and carry him. And so then I just see him like hustling over these hills carrying this cat man. I'm like, what's going on? Like he's such a fun guy to play with.
100%. Oh man, that makes me want to play Fortnite sometime.
Yes, me too.
Definitely soon. But we'll move along now into, of course, the real topic we wanted to talk about was the Toronto Maple Leafs. And now, obviously, with 2 weeks to kind of reflect on the Leafs' loss. Of course, they lost their qualifying round against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now I guess we can talk. I know it never happened, right?
Shocking.
But I mean, now we can talk about it with a clearer mind. So first, I want to ask, what were your overall impressions on the Leafs in that round?
Not great, guys. They weren't a good team. Like they were okay. It's tough to clarify here. Like they were good, obviously, and they probably should have won that series just from the underlying numbers. But you have to beat Columbus. You're spending what is it, like $13 million over the cap to house a team of offensive mercenaries, and you're not able to. You get shut out twice. I don't care how elite quote unquote elite defensively or the Columbus Blue Jackets are. You're the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like you have any team with Austin Matthews and John Tavares just alone on a roster should be capable of scoring at least one goal a game, and they didn't. This was, at the end of the day, like this was a flawed team through the entire season. We realized it. I think a lot of people just kind of didn't want to, myself included, didn't want to kind of admit it going into this. But this is a flawed team. Like they had so many holes just down the roster, and it was like when you really took a step back to think about it, like do you really envision a top four with Cody Ceci on the top pairing, winning a cup or going 3 rounds deep or something like that? I just can't. Like it seemed like they had a great, obviously a great group up front, but there were so many, that meme of like, there's a crack in the wall and Seth Rogen's trying to put like duct tape over it. Mm-hmm. Like that reminded me a lot of their blue line, where it was just this crack in their foundation, and they kept trying to put the duct tape over it, and eventually it's just going to crumble, and it did. So I if anything, it's a good thing, because it'll really force management to reconsider, what they're doing, what the plan is, because I think there are a lot of things that they could have improved on and tweaked as the season went on. But yeah, there's like the fact that even if they had won game 5, the fact that it went to 5 games against Columbus is a little ridiculous. So yeah, just really, really disappointing. And this was the year. I mean, obviously there was expectations before, but the contention window is really, like, it'll be open for as long as Matthews is on this team, obviously, but you don't want to waste, like, the thing that everyone criticizes the Oilers for is wasting Connor McDavid's prime. And soon we're going to have to, if the Leafs don't start making some noise in the playoffs, we're soon going to start having to have conversations about, are the Leafs wasting Matthews' prime, because they need to get out of the first round, and they didn't even make the playoffs this year. So yeah, really, really disappointing.
Absolutely. It was definitely a very frustrating series. I mean, obviously, first of all, it's ridiculous that a team shoots under 2% at 5-on-5 for an entire series.
My God,
but
I know.
Credit to the Blue Jackets for playing a strong defensive game. Like they don't get enough credit for how well they've been playing, and they've been buying into Tortorella's system, and we saw that on full display during that series. But I mean, when it comes to just that whole series, do you see that as a wasted opportunity, or did the Leafs just play like the team we think they are?
Absolutely wasted opportunity. They had a prime opportunity to actually make some noise, and not even like the thing is with the bubble is everything is so like it's just different. Right? Like I don't know. They were playing a Columbus team that they should have beaten. They had more offensive firepower than them, and I think that if they had capitalized on their chances more, they could have at least outscored them, by a bit. Like if you're able to score 3 goals in a minute, or 3 goals in 3.5 minutes or something to come back, then obviously you should do that. And then Tampa was banged up, and Columbus was able, like Columbus, for example, they were able to take Tampa a couple games deep and 5 overtimes deep and all that. Mm-hmm. And then it's kind of an open field. Like all you need is a hot goalie. And this was a 5-game series. Like there was just so many. This was just such a wasted opportunity. Like when you have that much salary dedicated to your forward core, and you have the pieces that the Leafs do, regardless of their weaknesses, you should be able to beat a team like that. That should be able to give you an edge, even though you're the 8th seed, they're the 9th seed. You should never get upset. And I really do think that the Leafs had a great opportunity to advance. The bubble is being played in their city. They had their facilities open earlier than any other team. They had more players for organized workouts together than any other team to start off, and it just was all for nothing. Like what advantage did that give you? It gave you an even earlier exit than you did last year. So there's no way to kind of chop it up. Like there's no moral victories here. It was just disappointing kind of across the board. And I know that's a bit of a sad thing to say, or morbid thing to say with this team, considering they still have a ton of talent. But I mean, this was a year for them to actually make some noise. The management put this team together to make some noise, and they did absolutely nothing.
Yeah, it's just pretty much a microcosm of just how much of a wasted opportunity this whole season was. And we'll get to that in a moment, of course. And of course, because of the loss, there's going to be some changes in the offseason. But you mentioned Austin Matthews was being one of the bright spots in that series. That obviously would be my candidate for the MVP of the series for them. But who impressed you besides him? And as a whole, who disappointed you the most?
Mitch Martin disappointed me the most, for sure. I mean, that was horrendous from him. And it's not even like you do have to take everything around him as context as well. You can't just when you have a negotiation like that, when your team is cap strapped to that extent because you decided I want to be paid like one of the best players in the league, and then you're in a 5-game series against a lower seeded team, and you have, I think it's 1 even strength assist or 1 even strength point in 5 games. You don't show up. You admit to being disengaged in the first game. That's like absolutely unacceptable. Mitch Marner, a little off topic, Mitch Marner had the opportunity to skate by and be the most popular Leaf possibly ever. Like to reach a level of fame in this city, a city that like if you give them anything, they will love you forever, and have parades for Eastern Conference Finals losses, and the ability to do that, become one of the most beloved figures in Toronto history, and he ruined it. And this playoff series, like he will never regain. For example, my dad, I always use my dad as an example here because he's relatively informed, but he has enough uncle in him to still be, a little cantankerous. And he loved Mitch before this. And now if I mention his name around me, he tells me to shut up. So it's it's a little rough. So yeah, he disappointed me the most for sure. In terms of who impressed me the most, I mean, like Alexander Kerfoot had a good series, I think, like specifically considering how lackluster his regular season was. I think he was able to kind of, it made me more confident in him having a bounce back year next year because of all the injuries he dealt with this year and just like more stability. Other than that, I mean, like the Leafs had John Tavares had a great series, obviously, but that's not, like an underrated thing. But other than that, I mean, like I can't. And that's the problem. I can't really think of a Leaf that surprised me positively. Nick Robertson was great. I thought the decision to scratch the decision to scratch him for Andreas Johnsson, who hadn't played in 5 months or whatever, was a terrible idea, and was maybe just here's your last game as a Leaf, congratulations, like you can play in it. But yeah, Nick Robertson was really good, but other than that, no one really impressed me. And I think that kind of says more than anything.
What about Frederick Anderson? Where would you put him on your scale?
I think the raw numbers for Frederick Anderson say he had a great series. Like, you can look at his save percentage and all that and says, wow, he was really good. But again, Frederick Anderson was the second or even possibly third best goaltender in the series.
Mm-hmm.
And the Leafs have never had their goaltender. They've never had Frederick Anderson steal them a series, steal them a playoff game. And you need that. When you're a Stanley Cup contending team, you need to have a goaltender who can steal you a game, who can maybe even steal you a series. The playoffs are just too much of a grind for you to get by without that. And I think what we're starting to realize now with Frederick Anderson is he's just a good goaltender. And I think a lot of people thought he was going to be great, or that he was great, but he's just fine. And the Leafs need more than fine, especially with the way that they play and with how little defensive support they have. They need a goaltender who can stand on his head. They need a goaltender who is above that average and who can make up that sort of like aggregate between how well they push the play and how bad they defend the play. And Frederick Anderson just proved that maybe he's not up to that task, and he might be up to that task on a different team who gives him more support. But there's no way they re-sign him. And again, like the raw numbers were fine, and Freddie fans will say, oh, he had a 9.3 whatever save percentage, or maybe 9.4, something like that. Cool, but the other goaltenders outplayed you. And at the end of the day, you can have great numbers. That's terrific. But if the team, you can score 100 goals in a game, terrific. But if the team has 101, you still lose. It doesn't matter. So, that's what happened. That's what happened with Freddie, and it's a shame because he's really well liked in this fan base, but he's let in just these back-breaking goals in elimination games 3 straight years now, and you just can't do that.
For sure. And I got a couple just super quick follow-up questions on that note about that. But I mean, first, like on the note of Freddie Anderson, if the Leafs don't re-sign him, I mean, what kind of move do you think the Leafs would have to make to make up for that number one goalie position opening up?
Oh, they'd have to go external, right? So like, I don't think, I love Jack Campbell, but I think he's a really good kind of maybe 1B, but I don't think he can kind of step into a starter's job right now. You would have to go externally, and I don't have the 2021 goaltending free agency class in front of me. But like, they're the two guys who are hitting the market this year, Robin Lehner and Jacob Markstrom. And if you like, I would be supportive of Lehner as a Leaf. Absolutely. I think that I think him and Jack Campbell would get along really well just from a personality standpoint. And I think Lehner would really thrive in a media market like this. I think that he would have a lot of fun because he's very beloved, and he seems to have really kind of changed his mind on a lot of very important things, and is outspoken for a lot of good causes. And I think he would be appreciative of the term that he would get to, because he's never been given that security. So if you can't, but the thing is, like, would you be selling Frederick Anderson low? If you trade him this offseason, which you would have to do if you sign a guy like Lehner. So there's a lot of balls up in the air. I think that the thing that the Leafs need to do, I mean, they're going to have him. I think they're going to have Freddie go into next season knowing that it's his last year, kind of in a JVR sense. This is last year. Just have fun, play it out. Maybe we can win a championship. Kind of go out. It's your swan song. And the support that they can give him is getting better defensemen, doing something to support him in that regard. Because he just doesn't have that right now. So next year is going to be the last for Frederick Anderson in Toronto. He had a really great stretch. He was the best goaltender I can remember playing for the Leafs since, in terms of full-time starter, since, I don't know, Ed Belfour maybe. So that's terrific. You'll always have the regular season wins record, which is great too. But I just don't think he was good enough to. I don't think he is good enough to get the Leafs over the hump.
And then my second question on that note is, I mean, I'll just get it out of the way, of course, with us knowing that Marner had a disappointing season. And I mean, so much of the fan base is kind of against him right now. Do you see the Leafs taking any drastic moves again, like with Marner, or do you think they sit pat with him?
Well, they're bringing him back, obviously. Like they made him yeah, they essentially made him that promise in the really disappointing exit interviews, media availabilities, or however you want to call them. But I don't like. Obviously, they're not going to trade him, but at the same time, like, why not? What didn't? Okay, I know. Sorry, I know this is really scatterbrained. I have a lot of thoughts on Marner, so the brain's going a million miles a minute. But essentially, what I didn't understand is these players are so comfortable in Toronto, Marner included. Like they've been given everything they have ever wanted. Think about it. Like every roster piece that they need, every one last piece away from a complete team they need, Dubas has gone out and gotten them. And every time they've asked for more money, they've gotten it. And what have they given back in return? Matthews has returned, obviously, but like Marner, nothing. And so if you, by saying, yeah, you'll be back, we believe, like all that kind of stuff, it doesn't, I don't think that he's earned the ability to, I don't think he's earned the benefit of the doubt to motivate himself. I think what he needs to do is he needs to have kind of a come to Jesus moment of, I love being a Leaf. And if I don't kind of, get myself together here, then I won't be a Leaf. And so that needs to be my motivation. I need to come back and have the best season possible. And he hasn't really, and like, I think he kind of needed that fire to be lit under him. And by essentially saying, oh yeah, we're not going to trade Mitch Marner. Oh no, Mitch Marner's going to be a Leaf here forever, blah, blah, blah. That's kind of, again, like at least adding some comfort to him. And he hasn't earned comfortability right now. So I'm all about supporting your guys, but Dubas has done that to a fault at certain points. And I think with Marner, that was kind of a time to draw a line in the sand, and he didn't. And I think that's a little concerning.
Absolutely.
It'll be very interesting to see what happens with Mitch Marner going forward. But I just want to just do one last reflection of the 2019-20 season, because this question's been on my mind for a while. I mean, we saw quite a lot of embarrassing losses for the Leafs. And this season especially, there's been a couple embarrassing losses. We don't
Don't remind us. Don't remind us.
I just can mention a few embarrassing losses. You probably know what I'm talking about. But I want to ask you, since we know that this season was just doomed from the start, was there a moment that you thought to yourself, you know what? Maybe this team isn't what they're not going to do anything this year?
Well, there were so many points. Like, the thing is, like, I didn't think it was doomed from the start, but there were so many signs that I think a lot of people just ignored. Like right at the start of the season, where it can be like, that's weird, but we still got a good team, it'll be fine. And then it all kind of came crashing down. Honestly, the David Ayres game, like I know that's a very cliche answer to say, but like you can't recover from that. Like everyone says, oh, the the St. Louis Blues were, in last place on January 1st or 31st or something, and then they won the cup. That's great, but they didn't lose to their AHL Zamboni driver on home ice on national television. And it just, like, I think at that point, when they failed to kind of rebound from that, just like that was it. That was curtains for me. That's where I was like, this team is broken. Like they're not gonna. They have these fundamental flaws in them that will prevent them from reaching the success they could achieve. That, and also like the second time they got clapped by Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, like I think that was not the Kaskasuo one when Babcock was there, when essentially they used him as a sacrifice. But it was when Evgeny Malkin was a late. It was the birth of the Mark Donk meme, I think, where Evgeny Malkin was a late scratch before the game, and they brought in Anthony Agostino, I think it was, and he scored the first goal like a minute in, and I was just like, yeah, that's the most Leafs thing I've ever seen happen, and there's no, like, this team is cursed. There was so many embarrassing, like, give your head a shake kind of losses that the Leafs had in the season that I can't even remember them all off the top of my head, but that one really stood out to me because it was just like, this is the narrative of so many years is coming. Like the prophecy is being fulfilled here, and it's just like, there's no way.
I'd agree with you on that with the David Ayres game and that second Penguins loss. I mean, obviously, with the benefit of hindsight, this is much easier to say now. But just looking back, I think the fact that they started the season out with Mike Babcock was probably a huge mistake. And we don't need to analyze the decision for the coaching firing and hiring of Sheldon Keefe. We already know that maybe it was not the right call to start the season with Babcock. But that's for me. Like, probably looking back, that was probably the wrong decision.
Absolutely, that was undoubtedly. Like they started. We should have known that that the season was cursed from that moment. Like that Mike Babcock was not going to end the season as the Leafs head coach. There was no way. He publicly, him and the general manager didn't get along. Like when an employee is just constantly like speaking out about his superior like that, about just like undermining him at every single turn, doing like these weird mind game political moves and playing a roster that is being built to be played one way in essentially the complete opposite direction, almost out of spite. And so to keep him around in a season as important as this, and to essentially hand the keys to your car to a guy who is not going to drive it into the garage safely. It just does, like, that just made no sense to me. And I'm not sure how much say Dubas had over that. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he was like overruled by someone. If that was his decision to say, like, let's give it another shot with Mike after he took no accountability at the press conference the year before, after he got outcoached by Bruce Cassidy 2 seasons in a row, after, like, he was a smart guy. He watches the same hockey that we do, and he has to know that the way that this team was being played wasn't being played properly. And so for him to trust the team that he was trying to build with a guy who he knew was going to sabotage it, it was just absurd. And to even wait that many games into the season to do it too. I mean, it just, like, there were so many flaws. There were so many signs. Like, the writing was on the wall, and it just seemed like they were dragging their feet, and they randomly did it. They randomly pulled the trigger on I think it was like a random Wednesday night. I was like, what? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And so that was a big misstep. And if that, I know everyone wants to talk about the Barry trade or signing Ceci and all that, but if that was Dubas's call, that was for sure his worst move of the offseason.
Couldn't agree more.
Now I want to ask you about, obviously, heading more into the offseason. We kind of talked about what the Leafs want to do with Mitch Marner, but out of all the Leafs likely trade candidates, the other ones, Andreas Johnsson, Kasperi Kapanen, Kerfoot, Dermott, even William Nylander to an extent, even though I'm against that. Which one do you think could actually be on the move this offseason?
I think Andreas Johnsson's gone, like, already. Like, I think there's no – essentially what the Leafs have to kind of do with William Nylander's not gone. I don't think that. I think that he's staying for sure. Like, there's no way that they're going to trade him. This has said he's not in the market for trading skilled players, and that's what Nylander is. But if you look at the three, like the Kerfoot, Kapanen, and Johnssons, they all make roughly the same amount of money, and Kapanen's a little younger, but they're all roughly in the 24, 25, 26 age range. They have to take a look at what they can bring to the roster, right? So Kapanen, he brings that speed, and no matter, with all his other faults, and he has these other faults for sure, I think that finding someone with an elite skill is probably the hardest thing in scouting to do. So if you have a guy like that, then I think you should at least do as much as you possibly can with him. So like, no matter what, no matter who they get back for Kapanen, their roster is slower when they do that. And I think that kind of harms them in the way they want to play. Kerfoot, I think the guy fractured his dental and facial bones at the start of the year, and people kind of forget about that, considering this was such a cursed season injury-wise for the Leafs. But he was drinking like Philly cheesesteaks through a straw for a lot, and he dropped a lot of weight early in the season because of that. And he admitted, I think, in a piece of The Athletic, that it was tough for him to build that back up mid-season. And then he was also dealing with changing locations from Colorado to Toronto, and then also changing coaches mid-season and systems, now all that kind of stuff. So I think a summer would do him good. And if you have a decent third line center locked in for, he can play center, if he proves that he can play center, and you have a decent third line center locked in for another 3 years at $3.5 million, that's a pretty good luxury to have. But then you look at Johnsson and you go, okay, what's his special skill? I can't think of a special skill that he has. Okay, he's a winger. He doesn't have the ability to play center. Okay, well, like, that's Kerfoot's big kind of value, is that if he can play center, he really shores up a positional need for them. So what does he do? Like, if you take Johnsson out of the lineup, how much worse are the Leafs? And we've realized that they're not that much worse. In fact, they might even be better. I think Nick Robertson can produce more as a rookie than Johnsson could do, and that guy makes a fraction of a third of what he makes less, and could maybe even either outproduce or match that production as an 18, 19-year-old. So I really think that Johnsson is the most expendable one of the bunch, and if you can get any value for him, and I think you can, because he's, at the end of the day, he does have a 20-goal season under his belt, and he's locked into term at like a decent price point, 3.5, but still, like, it's not kind then I think you pull the trigger on it, because you might not be able to get like a stud defenseman back, but we also remember the Leafs don't have a ton of draft picks. So if you can kind of restock that draft cupboard with a guy who's essentially a surplus asset for you, go do it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I guess this ties into our next question, because one of the things the Leafs are going to be doing this offseason is just taking a serious look at their roster and determining, is this good enough? And I think we can all agree that it's not good enough. And there is going to be some changes. And I guess what I want to say is, what do you think are the underlying issues with the Leafs, and what can they do to try and correct it?
I mean, that's the $1 million question, right? Like, first of all, their underlying issues are they don't have right shot defensemen at all. Other than re-signing and the last right shot defenseman that they signed at an NHL level was Roman Polak when they brought him back. Like, Mac Hollowell doesn't count, and they traded for Barry and re-signed Hall and stuff. Like, they need right shot defensemen. Doesn't, like, they just do. You can't keep playing. You can't keep playing a guy like Cody Ceci on top minutes. I think he's gone for sure. And you can't, like, Justin Hall is best suited as a third pairing guy. It's fine, but you do need to bring like some balance to your blue line for sure. You can't. I know the Leafs want to play one way, and that's very skill and forward forward thinking and all that kind of stuff. But you need if they had a right shot Muzzin, they'd be prime. They'd be great, but they don't, and they need that. Other one is, as much as like this has become such a played out narrative, but there is some truth to it. They do need to get a little tougher. And it's not tough in the sense of you need to fight. Like, we've seen that anyone can fight. Jason Spezza can fight. Anyone can fight. But I'm talking about, like, when you go into a corner with someone in the playoffs, that person hates their life. And that person, it just grinds on them in a playoff series across 7 games. Pierre-Luc Dubois, yeah, he's a really dirty player. But I guarantee you the Leafs, and I don't condone anything that he does, but I guarantee you that the Leafs woke up every morning, they were about to play the Columbus Blue Jackets, and they went, oh, man, we got to deal with Dubois. Or, oh, man, we got to deal with, when they're playing Boston, Marchand. Or not even Marchand, but like a DeBrusk even, like a guy like that who is just, like, so annoying. He's a pain in the ass to play against. The Leafs need guys like that. They need players who will piss off the other team, who will stand up for players. Like, do you have any idea how many times I saw Frederick Anderson get snowed, knocked over, kind of clowned by other players, and no one did anything? Like, at a certain point, stand up for your teammates. Like, you don't have to, I don't advocate for, violence, but like, show some passion, show some fire. So they need some of that as well. And now they have 2 good goalies. So I think that's great. Like, they wouldn't have had to play Columbus if Michael Hutchinson wasn't the goaltender at the start of the year, if they had shored this up earlier. So that would be something that would harm them before. But they need, again, it's so cliche, but they need more balance to their blue line. They need to sign guys who can not only move the puck, but who can defend, who don't have these glaring flaws in their games. Like, if you look at a guy like Martin Marincin, for example, yeah, he's good at one thing, and that's like preventing zone entries. But his biggest flaw is a pretty big one, in that when he has the puck on his stick, it's a grenade. It's terrible. He harms your team. If you have just a decent, fine depth defenseman to add to your roster, preferably a guy who doesn't harm you, I think that would go so far with the Leafs. They have the forward talent that their defense doesn't need to be outstanding. It just needs to be okay. It needs to be good enough. It needs to be the 17th best blue line in the league. And right now they have like the 29th. And yeah, there are a lot of those things. And they also need to bring in Bruce Boudreau as assistant. I mean, come on. Like, it's like, come home and do it. It's not every day you get to live out a childhood dream. And their power play was terrible. I don't know what was going on there. I don't know what the disconnect was between Paul McFarland and the team, but if you get that power play firing in all cylinders again, I think Boudreau can do that, and boom, there you go. You're golden.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned Bruce Boudreau. Like, we've been talking a lot lately, or at least just online talk has been about, is this rumor legit, or Leaf fans being too excited over a free agent coach being available? I mean, now that we're seeing like some rumors coming out, especially a couple of days ago when James Merle said the Leafs actually tried to reach out to the Wild, and while no meeting took place, there was some mutual interest. So I guess now that what I'm saying is, if Bruce Boudreau does come to Toronto, which at this point doesn't seem like a realistic possibility, but if he does, what do you think he's going to bring to this team?
I think above all else, he'll bring a sense of levity to it. I mean, I don't know what kind of person Paul McFarland is, but Bruce Boudreau, I mean, he has experience dealing with uber talented offensive players who are also unique personalities, and we've seen that in Washington. We even a little bit in even a little bit in Anaheim when he was back there. With guys like Getzlaf and Perry. I think he brings a sense of levity and respect with him. Like, players respect Bruce Boudreau. They want to play for him. He's a fun guy, and if he's allowed to be able to be kind of the fun uncle, he doesn't have to be the dad, doesn't have to be the disciplinarian, but if he's the fun uncle who can really unlock those the talents and the powers that the Leafs have up front, I think he'll be beloved. And I think that's the biggest draw, is that if he were to come home, he doesn't have to deal with all the sort of just all the malaise that the logistical stuff you have to deal with when you're a head coach. When you have to set the practice schedule, you have to set, what time, the travel schedule, you have to deal, what are you going to fly in the night before or the night of, are you going to sleep, this kind of stuff. Like, he doesn't have to deal with all that. He can just focus on improving the team on the ice and having fun with the players and maximize their talents. I think that would be something that's really, like, it would just add so much to this team that clearly haven't proven that they can govern themselves. And I think Boudreau would be that perfect kind of hybrid of, they respect him, so they stay in line, but also he's able to have fun. And he also just, he's a really good offensive coach. And I think that the results will kind of speak for themselves.
Of course. Absolutely. And you touched on, the Leafs' need for a right-handed defenseman, and also a bit of toughness. And that's kind of, kind of ironic, because it goes kind of without saying that the Barry Kadri trade didn't really work out for the Leafs. Have your views on that trade changed at all now that the season is over?
My views when the trade happened was that I think the Leafs won it. And if you looked at it on paper, I mean, they got a half-retained Barry, Kerfoot thrown in there. And yeah, Kadri was great, but I think no matter what, like, everyone's, the referendum on him is out now, and that everyone's saying, why did we trade Kadri? We needed him back. Look, he's thriving in the playoffs. Yeah, but you can't, like, if the Leafs went into another series and they went into another series with him and he did that again, like, you can't, there's no coming back from that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you needed to trade him there. But this trade worked out I think as poorly as they possibly could have imagined. And my thoughts from the end of the season, my thoughts now are the exact same. Like, it was a failure. Like, Tyson Barrie he just wasn't a fit. He should have been a fit. He wasn't a fit. And he was never used properly right off the bat. His acclimation process was completely stunted, and he was forced to kind of change systems and change coaches and regain confidence midseason that I think he was never able to. And although I'm a little disappointed that he wasn't able to kind of use the months long kind of quote unquote off season that the players got while they were on pause to reboot and earn himself some money in free agency, to be quite frankly, or to be quite honest, sorry. It just was a shame, like that he was kind of treated the way that he was, and that they kind of botched that transition process, and Dubas admitted that. So it just worked. The Leafs can't afford to swing and miss on trades like this, and just through whatever circumstances it just didn't work out, and it really, really hurt them this season.
For sure. Of course. And going back to coaching, I just want to ask, who do you think may be joining Keefe behind the bench for next season?
I mean, you would like to see Boudreau, obviously. I mean, Hackstall's still there, and he would. I think he's a missing piece. Like, I think he really would bring everything that the Leafs need. And if he's actually intrigued by this, then that means that there's fire where the smoke is. I mean, he's a head coach, but with the pandemic, with him getting up in age, I think it would be the perfect scenario for him to really just be able to live his best life and really give the Leafs what they want, and what they need, quite frankly. So yeah, I see it actually happening. This isn't just rumor fodder to me. I think that there's a decent possibility that he can do this.
Mm-hmm.
That would probably one of the most exciting things of this offseason. And just,
that would be.
I think it's one of those things where, as Leaf fans, I remember back when the John Tavares saga was at its climax, and everyone was like, "Oh, there's no way he's going to join the team." Like, I felt the same way. I did not believe he was going to sign until I saw the post saying he signed. It would be one of those moves. It'd be up there as like one of the happiest moments in recent Leafs history. And I guess maybe it would be up there, if not for maybe a certain other defenseman signing, but we don't need to get into that.
Okay.
I guess maybe what I'm trying to say is let's just, before we wrap up this Leafs talk, what do you think would be the most ideal move the Leafs can make in the offseason?
In terms, like, are we talking like real life, or are we talking like, fantasy move?
I guess we could say let's do one fantasy move and then one realistic move, like from trade perspective.
Oh, from a trade perspective, I mean, I think like he's been linked to the Leafs. I think getting a guy like Radko Gudas would be great. Like he doesn't, he's not going to change your life, but I think he's kind of what they need. So that'd be fantastic. It's a very weird time in that like the cap is staying flat. A lot of teams are hesitant to spend money, because of the economic impacts of all this. So a lot of these players who think they're going to cash in big over the summer, I don't think are, at least on a long-term basis. I think if they take not like, bottom barrel salaries, but just like team-friendly deals that are short-term, like if it's not going to happen, but if the Leafs really want to take a swing for it and essentially trade a bunch of guys to clear some room and then say, look, Alex Pietrangelo, for example, you just got depending on what happens tonight, like you just got bounced in the playoffs. You are our missing piece. Sign a 1-year, 2-year contract with us. We'll give you all these resources, and you can play with a team that needs you and become a legend in your home city. Something like that. That's obviously a fantasy talk, but that would be, that's ideal right there. And I think with the pandemic, as unrealistic as it is, it's not as unrealistic as it would be without it. So yeah, that would be, the most ideal offseason move. But at the same time, like the most ideal lifestyle move for me is if a Bugatti just showed up outside my door right now. So it's, that's what we're talking about. So, but at least with the Leafs, their best case scenario is a little more likely than mine.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
For
I'd
sure.
say so. Why don't I ask one more hockey question, and then I want to just talk about some Raptors for a little bit. So the Stanley Cup playoffs are kind of in full swing. There's 2 more series left. Both of them could be over by tonight, or one of them could be extended to a 7th game. But now that we have a better idea of what the playoff picture looks like, who do you think is going to be in the Stanley Cup Finals, and who do you think is going to win it?
I mean, I think the outcome that would be best for the sport would clearly be Colorado Tampa. That would be so much fun. That would be like 2 gladiators just going at each other. It would be the best for the sport because those are the 2 most like high octane offensive fun teams together playing against each other for the world to see. So those are my 2 picks. I think like they're both incredibly talented. I want to see what Colorado does. I want to see what Colorado does when their back's against the wall because they haven't been challenged at all yet. So that would be a lot of fun. But no, those are my 2 picks for sure. Like I'm not making any making any left field choices. We've already seen people get burned for that, especially in the bubble. So yeah, Colorado and Tampa, lock them in for me. And at that point, I don't care who wins. I just want to see the product of what they're going to bring on the ice.
For sure.
I think that'd be the most ideal one for me too. Maybe the only other one that I would like to see is maybe Vegas versus Philly. I don't know, something just about those 2 teams would make for a fun series. Oh yeah, for sure.
I would love to see Philly in the finals. They're a really fun team to watch as well.
Yeah, no, Philly is great. I mean, the fact that they've let Montreal push them as far as they have right now is a little concerning.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that if you're a good enough team to make the Cup final, then what is it, the 23rd, 24th seeded team in the playoffs shouldn't be able to, or 22nd, I'm not sure what they are, should be able to push you that far. But no, they're so much fun. And Carter Hart's a star. Sean Couturier is finally getting kind of like the national love that he deserves. Travis Konechny is a lot of fun too. It's just great.
Of course. And before we close out our little discussion here, I wanted to kind of put it on a brighter note here. I know although you're not an NBA analyst, you're an NHL analyst, but I know you do love the Toronto Raptors and basketball. So we wanted to ask you a couple questions about them. But I mean, of course, they're doing great this season. But how far do you think the Toronto Raptors will go?
They can go all the way if they want to. Like this is they are. People say that oh they're not that talented. Blah blah blah. No, like this is a very talented team, and they just have this buy-in, this complete, unflinching, unabetted buy-in to each other. They believe in themselves. They believe in their ability to be. They believe in the fact that they are champions. They believe in their ability to be champions again. And when you look at the Eastern Conference, like the Bucks, I mean, yes, they got spanked in their in their first game, and sort of the Raptors last year. But the Bucks, like they don't. Giannis is great, but they're not unbeatable, and like especially in a series, even without Kawhi taking over, like there are players that are stepping up, and Boston's great too, but they don't scare me. The Raptors they're just so deep, 1 through 15. They could throw anyone out there, and they work well within their system. They clamp teams down. They infuriate them defensively. They execute their systems perfectly. They're exactly what a basketball team should be. And while I don't think that they are gonna necessarily win the championship this year, I think that they can at least make the finals for sure. And look, we've seen when you get into the finals, like anything can happen. Like everyone counted the Raptors out against the Warriors last year, and then look what happened. Injuries can happen. Bounces can happen. This is just such an exciting team, and they are essentially on cruise control against the Nets and destroying them. So I'm really, really interested to see what happens next. This is, who knows what they could do, but I think that finals for sure they can do that.
Isn't it so refreshing, like having a even playoff sport where you're not having to stress about every game? Like I was telling Michael about this even before we started recording, but also given the fact that they're playing afternoon games, it's almost like you feel like it's not really playoff basketball, because also you kind of just sit back and the Raptors are just going to kill it.
Well, yeah, like I expect them to win now. I have faith, and they've earned it. Like that's the thing. This team has earned the benefit of the doubt. This team has earned, you to think that it's going to be the best possible outcome. And that's beautiful. I can't remember the last Toronto sports team that's done that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I remember even in game 2 when they were down for most of the game, I was just like, I had like no doubt that they'd come back. I was just waiting for they're gonna come back like any second now. And it wasn't just me, giving myself false hope. Like I actually knew it. That's a crazy feeling.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of players that we have faith in, Fred VanVleet has been excellent in these in the bubble so far. And at the time of recording this, we're a few hours removed from their win against the Nets, and they're up 3-0 in their series. In that game, VanVleet scored a pretty impressive buzzer beater. And there's been talks about what's going to be the future for him and his contract. I guess what I want to ask you, Mike, do you think he's going to get the max?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you can get the max for sure. It just really kind of depends on what the Raptors can do and if he wants to stay in Toronto. I think that there's some finagling they can do. The team is making money. They can clearly spend as high into luxury tax as possible. But yeah, VanVleet, especially if he has if he keeps up what he's doing in the playoffs, like if he keeps that up for 3-4 rounds deep, then absolutely he's a max player. We've seen players get max that didn't deserve it, and VanVleet is better than them. So yeah, I think will he take a discount to stay with Toronto? I think of any of the upcoming free agents who might be able to do that, he's the most likely. But he likes to bet on himself, and he it's worked out pretty well for him so far. Who knows? But I think that he has a great situation in Toronto. He's got a young family that's settled here. This is a system that utilizes him properly. So yeah, works out great.
For sure. I can't wait to see what happens there. But I mean, let's just hope he stays a Raptor. But my last question on the Raptors for you is, just like you kind of have that connection with Trevor Moore, are there any Raptors players or basketball players that you really like in particular?
Oh man, I mean, I love Serge Ibaka, as a person and as a player as well. I think he is the ultimate. We talk about locker room guy, he is the ultimate locker room guy. I think that he is like, if you ever want to build like a championship culture, if you ever want a team to like each other, if you ever want, to be levity, but also like an intensity and an accountability in there, you keep Serge Ibaka. I don't care. I'm glad that I'm not, Masai Ujiri, because I don't have to make a decision on his contract or anything. But I'm like, I don't care how much he declines. I don't care whatever, pay him whatever he wants. And as well, I'm in love with Marc Gasol. I think I'm really a big fan of just smart basketball players, guys who elevate a team through maybe like unseen ways. Like, he's not going to score, he's not going to put up, a double every night. He's not going to do all that, but he's just such a smart, both defensive and offensive player, especially for a big man. And I think that, his acquisition, the Raptors don't win the championship without him. Mm-hmm. There's no way. So I love him too. I hope he stays. I hope there's a way he can stay. And also for this season as well, I've been really impressed with Rondé Hollis-Jefferson. I mean, he was unable to shoot kind of when he came to the Raptors, and he was a very raw guy. And a lot of people forget that Nick Nurse called him and Stanley Johnson out pretty much after their first practice and training camp to say, we hold ourselves to a standard here that these guys need to kind of learn. And he has done that. And he is a poster child too of like, you plug a guy, a raw kind of unpolished prospect or tweener kind of player into the Raptor system, and they turn into a gem. It's almost like kind of what the Patriots do, where they just know how to use players properly. So I'm a big fan of all those guys. The Raptors, this is the most likable team in Toronto sports history, I think. Like this, not even with Kawhi last year. I'm talking about the 2019-20 Raptors. That just the buy-in from all these players. None of them are spectacular, but they all do what they need to do so well, and they can all step up in absences. And even without Kawhi, even with all the injuries they faced this year, they were never fully healthy this season. They just got these contributions from these, unlikely sources. I'm all in on this Raptors team. I love them.
100%. Same here. It's been an amazing season. Yeah.
I guess the only way to end this interview is just to ask you, if you were somehow invited to be on Serge Ibaka's show, how hungry are you? Would you take it, or would you back out?
Absolutely. Are you kidding me? I wanna hang out with Serge Ibaka as much as possible. Like, I don't care what weird body part he makes me eat from an animal. I would do that in a heartbeat. He's so much fun. I wouldn't even pay attention to what I'm eating because he'd be, probably chirping me or doing something like that. He'd be great. That is on my bucket list. I think the two things at the top are to be on Hot Ones and to be on How Hungry Are You? And I think I'm probably going to kick the bucket without doing either of those, but it would be so great if I could.
That would be insane. Absolutely. That would be a dream. But yeah, first, we want to thank you for coming on. Those are pretty much all our questions. We have one more we'll ask you soon, but at first I want to ask you, I want to tell you, thank you for coming on the show today and giving us your time.
Oh, no, absolutely, guys. Like, yeah, I love what you guys are doing. It's great that you guys are making your own content. And if I can help in any way, or it's just fun to chat with you guys. So absolutely. Like, I'll be back whenever you need me.
Of course. Thank you.
Man.
Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. And our last question is, of course, we put out a tweet about listener questions, but we got one from who other but than Tic Tac Tomar Omar. And he says this is very important, but he wants to ask you, what did it cost?
And my answer to that would be everything.
There you have it. There you have it.
I'm not going to explain the context behind that. The listeners are just going to have to figure it out for themselves. Mm-hmm. But Omar knows.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Okay.
But yeah, thanks so much for coming on, man. And we hope you have a great day. Really appreciate everything and all your insight.
Of course, guys. Thanks so much for having me on. I love what you guys do. And if you ever need me back, just I'm a text message or a DM away.
Awesome.
Of course, man. Thank you very much. Before we let you go, why don't you plug in your socials so people know where to find you?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm at Mikey Stevens 81 on Twitter, and you check out my stuff at Yahoo Sports. And we do Live Laugh Leafs, which is not so much Leaf centric now because they got bounced, but it's on YouTube and on all podcast apps you could possibly find. And yeah, it's great stuff. I'm proud of it, and hope you guys can check it out.
Mm-hmm. And definitely check out his work on Yahoo Sports. I saw your new article on the pros and cons of trading the trade candidates that we actually spoke about on this podcast. So check that out.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Awesome. right, we're back, and man, what a great interview that was with Mike Stevens, of course. Thank you once again to Mike for coming on, and we just love that. That was so insightful and just so fun.
We definitely have a lot of respect for Mike because he was our former boss at Header and Leaf, like we mentioned at the top of the interview. Just great guy, great to talk to. Definitely check out his work if you haven't already, and listen to his Live, Laugh, Leafs podcast. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I think it's a play on the saying "Live, Laugh, Love." I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. It's a great podcast. I've listened to it a few times. I definitely recommend if you haven't listened to it yet.
For sure, and check out his work, of course. But we're gonna close out soon. There's one more topic we didn't talk about. Well, two topics, but they're kind of the same topic that we didn't talk about off the top of the podcast. That I want to know your impressions first, but of course. The NHL draft lottery happened the day after the Toronto Maple Leafs were eliminated. And of course, the Toronto Maple Leafs were in that draft lottery. And as we know, the New York Rangers won the first overall pick, and they did it live. We saw the ball come out. I just want to know, what was your first reaction?
Well, it was, I didn't have any expectations going to that draft lottery because I was not expecting the Leafs to be there. And maybe once it became clear they were out, I was like, if they win, great. If they don't, it's whatever. This is just another reminder that the season was cursed. But I think once I saw the video of the ball, like the Leafs ball hitting the top and then not making it all the way up, and then the Rangers ball swooping in, it just brought back PTSD flashbacks of the Tavares shot that hit the post. It's super frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
This team is super frustrating to watch.
Shout out Corwin, our boy Corwin from Bar Down, who we had on this podcast earlier on with the other Bar Down guys. But he actually posted that video that kind of blew up the Leafs ball basically just missed it. And yeah, it's just a little PTSD there. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, we never really, I don't think as Leafs fans, or even, I don't think any Leafs fans really have had any expectations that they'll actually win. In fact, if you'd asked me that day, I actually, for some reason, I had, well, not even for some reason. The reason is that they always win it, but I felt like the Oilers will somehow win it and everyone will be mad. It was just like an inevitable thing for me, but I don't mind the New York Rangers winning it. I don't think they're exactly the most deserving team of out of the bunch, but it's going to be interesting to see Alexis Lafreniere play for the Rangers next season. It's still a great city to play for, and we'll see how that pans out. And then the second draft lottery actually happened yesterday, and that's the NBA draft lottery, and kind of a weaker draft this year, but a lot of hype, especially given LaMelo Ball. I've been talking about him throughout this season. Of course, I've been pretty high on him since he was in high school, but yeah, I mean, of course, he's a very raw prospect. Where will he go? And the Minnesota Timberwolves won the first overall pick, and then Golden State dropped second, and the Charlotte Hornets got the third pick. And I just want to know, what do you think of that order?
Okay, just a full disclaimer, I was not able to watch the draft lottery yesterday. I only found out about it because Matt told me, and my immediate reactions were that of disbelief and groaning, because I guess if you're an NBA fan and you see the draft results, Minnesota is not the team you think of that deserves a first overall pick. But I also find it kind of hilarious when you think back to that trade that they made with the Warriors. What was it, for Wiggins?
Yeah, for D'Angelo Russell, yeah.
Is this like karma for that trade or something? Is this like the NBA, the basketball god saying to the Warriors, no, like Mutombo, it's like, no, you shouldn't have done that. And this is them. It's like, yep, we're giving it to Minnesota. But I mean, for Minnesota, honestly, they don't really need this pick, but I think it would definitely help them. And I think Timberwolves are probably the team that we had so much expectations for them. There's so much hope for them to really develop into one of the top teams in the West, and they just, for whatever reason, have never really fully lived up to those expectations. Hopefully this first overall pick, whoever they take, will help them get them there. And because I think it would be great to see Minnesota play well again, because Minnesota deserves Minnesota deserves a good sports team. That's for sure.
And I get what you're saying when you say like they're not the most deserving team of it. I get it, because they've had so many opportunities. They shouldn't be a losing team at this point, after having both Andrew Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns on their team, and they even had Jimmy Butler at a certain point and it just didn't work. They should not have to be down here again. But it is what it is, and they deserve a chance to win. So that's that. But if we're talking teams that should have won, that deserve to win, 3 teams immediately come to mind, and that should have been Charlotte, because they've just been, they don't really have a bona fide star. They've had a good season with who they do have though. The Bulls are due for a first pick after they've picked 7th for the last few years. And then the biggest joke in the NBA, unfortunately, the New York Knicks, who just cannot win. They cannot win games. They cannot win a playoff spot, and they cannot win a draft lottery either.
They also can't win free agency.
That too. They just can't win. And, I really feel for the New York Knicks fans, because, us living here in Toronto, especially with the Toronto Maple Leafs, is kind of a very similar scenario, but I think even worse for them because they don't even win the draft lottery or even make the playoffs once. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't go their way. So those teams that, I kind of wish they would have gotten it, but we'll see how it pans out. In terms of the Warriors, they either way, they ended up with a great pick. Of course, they're trying to contend right now. So they could the rumors are that they could either trade that pick to try and get, someone even better to contend right now. Or, I'm thinking James Wiseman is a center, a cheap center, could be a star center, a young one, and they need a center. So either way, if they pick him, that would be great too.
You know what? I was just thinking of something. Can we confidently say now that the Timberwolves are the Edmonton Oilers of the NBA?
I think yeah, in terms of lottery luck, yeah. In terms of having the best player, not quite, but
yeah,
but yeah. In terms of lottery luck, they've had a lot of lottery luck, and I really just do hope that they can find success very soon, and hopefully this number 1 pick, assumingly going to be one of Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, or James Wiseman. Hopefully that they make a big impact on that team.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, something to think about maybe for NHL fans that want to get into basketball, especially Leaf fans that don't really want to watch the Leafs right now. This would be a good introduction. We could maybe provide that for them, maybe in a future episode.
Do you want a good comparison between 2 teams? I mean, we've compared the Oilers and the Timberwolves. We've compared the Leafs and the Knicks. How about the Bulls and the Oilers? Both are 2 teams who, had a dynasty with the greatest player to ever play their respective sports. And then they haven't been able to do anything since then. I mean, the Bulls had a great team led by Derrick Rose, but of course that didn't go as planned. And even the Oilers had, a great team back in 2006 that made the finals. But again, they didn't win. And then they've, unfortunately, both teams have fell kind of to the bottom of the league for the last decade almost. Mm-hmm. And there's a comparison I was thinking about the other day.
Go for it.
Yeah, so that was that. Bulls and Oilers, kind of similar in a lot of ways. But with that, I think we'll close it out.
Yes, that was a fun little thing. But if you like that segment that we just did, let us know. We might bring it back, because I love talking about basketball just as much as I love talking about hockey.
And they're a lot more similar than in a lot of ways. They're similar in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Not just because they play 82 games and a lot of the teams play in the same arenas.
Mm-hmm. And they're between the same months. Yep,
exactly. But yeah, let us know what you think of that segment. If there's any other segments you want us to do, we'd always love to come up with new ways to keep the podcast fresh and interesting. And we always like to hear from you guys. If there's any questions you have for us, please give us a shout out. You obviously know my Twitter handle is @TheLeafsIMO.
And mine is @Matt_Rodrigo_. You can find us both on Twitter there, and you could tweet us, message us, anything, and just give us feedback there. We're available there at any time. And thank you for listening. We'll close it out here. So we'll see you guys next week.
Take care, guys.